Hello, I am Mystic, and this is day 2 of introducing myself in as many different ways as I can. I'm gonna try 10 in a row in 10 days, and maybe I'll keep going after 10, but my goal is to find my tribe and to just explore different ways of introducing myself. So, and maybe I'll get more creative. Hopefully I'll get more creative as I go. So I'm Mystic, I go by Mystic online. I was a designer for 25 years. I left the tech industry last year where I had spent around the last 10 years of my career. A career I never planned on having, really. I kind of fell into design after college. I graduated with an art major in '99, and all I ever wanted to do was create art. I played in a bunch of bands growing up. I toured a little bit when I got older. Was a singer-songwriter for a bit, and I still play music, and I love music, and that was my earliest dream. But then I got into art in school. It was the only subject that I really had a chance of doing decently in, so I went to school to study fine art. And somewhere along the line, someone told me you couldn't make a living as an artist, and that kind of crushed my dreams, and I started looking into graphic design, and I realized this is kind of an interesting thing that's related to art, and I'm gonna be a graphic designer. And I started telling people that. And after college, I wound up getting a job as a graphic designer, working at this was in the .com boom in the 99, early 2000s. And I was junior designer working for a company that sold art prints. So my job was just to scan images all day, and I got paid 15 bucks an hour. And the other guy got 16 bucks an hour because he had a graphic design degree, and my degree was in fine art. And flash forward 25 years later, I was leading design last year for a 1,000-person organization, one of the biggest companies in the world. And I ended up leaving because it was a completely dysfunctional shit show of an environment. And I've never been happier. And I'm building my own thing. I'm building my own company right now. I'm developing a design agency. I'm doing a lot of different things. I'm working on my music. I've come back to my art. And I'm earning a livelihood in ways that bring me joy and are in alignment with who I am. And it's a whole different life than the one I was living last year when I was still in my career. My focus was entirely on how do I get to the next step? How do I get to the next level? How do I make more money? How do I get more stock option grants? All that shit that goes along with being in a big company. And I'm grateful to not be there anymore. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is how to get out of that, how to get out of your career if you're stuck in it. Because one of the truths I've discovered is that if you are skilled, if you are talented, if you've been in your career for a while, if you're someone like me who's in midlife, and you've been in your career 10, 20, even more years, you're very valuable. And our careers lead us to feel not valuable, because when we're in a job, especially in a big company, and as your career goes on, as mine did, it's kind of natural to end up in bigger companies. Not everyone goes that route, but it was the route that my career happened to take, and I found myself working at some of the tech giants. And it was a very interesting experience because I was never someone who planned on being in that world. I ended up in that world because I played a role in building a startup that got acquired by one of the big tech companies. And it was really exciting. It was really exciting to have built something and then have it get acquired it was a big acquisition, and it was big news at the time. And our CEO basically screwed everyone and kind of ran off with basically like generational wealth and kind of screwed over his early team. But the lesson it taught me was don't rely on someone else to make you rich. And I'm kind of glad it happened, actually, because if I had gotten as rich as I expected to from that acquisition, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And I'm really happy to be doing what I'm doing right now. I'm finding the joy again in life, And in the small moments, like I said, I've come back to my art and my music, and I'm just more present and more engaged in the moment. And it's a whole different experience of life, and I freaking love it. And so I guess one of the reasons I'm here is to tell my story, because I know there's a lot of folks where I was. I remember when I left my career last year, kind of watching videos from folks saying things like, you don't need to work so hard. And there's a whole world of opportunity out there. And I didn't really believe it at the time because I was so immersed in that sort of ethos of just grind hard and push it out. And it didn't really get me anywhere. And I found that the more I let go of that ethos, the more I relaxed, the more that I'm gonna sound a little woo-woo saying this, but the more the universe expressed itself through me. And anyway, like I said, I went to school for art. What I really wanted to do was be an artist. Now I'm coming back to that. And I think one of the main messages I have for people is it's never too late. And midlife is an incredible time to reevaluate what you're doing, to take the skills that you've developed in your misaligned career, the career that was a fallback because maybe at the time you, like me, didn't have the confidence to pursue the thing that you really wanted to do. And now midlife is the time to actually take all the skills that you've developed all these years helping companies. I was a designer, and as a designer, you really get to understand companies from a specific vantage point. You know, you're creating all the deliverables and the marketing materials and the brand and the assets and the websites. And later in my career, I got into designing product design. So I was designing the actual product. And in that, you have a unique perspective when you're in that experience. And if you're an engineer or if you're a product manager, it's sort of the same thing where you have this unique vantage point of how the company works. And if you've been in your career for a while, you've probably seen a lot of different companies and you've learned a lot of different things. And the thing you don't realize, or might not realize if you're seeing this, is that you can have your own company. And it's not that hard. It's easier than it's ever been, especially with AI and all the tools available to you. You don't need employees to have a business today. You definitely don't need investors. I see a lot of people who go out to start companies and they have a cool idea. And the first thing they do is they start putting a pitch deck together because they're like, that's just part of the thing. No, that's not part of the thing. You don't need to raise funds, especially now, more than ever. You don't need to, you don't need VCs. It's a lot of that is just an ego trip and you don't need it. There's some businesses where that is necessary, but if you're watching this, you probably don't have one of those businesses. But the bottom line is that you can basically find a livelihood doing things that you probably can't even imagine from your current vantage point. And I couldn't imagine a year ago the way I was making a living now, because it's just so out of the box. I create courses online, I help people with developing their brand, and I teach people about design and communication and the role that these things play in business. And I'm teaching this stuff to a lot of small business owners and folks who are starting out with just kind of going their own way after a long career. Anyway, it's super enjoyable. I love it. And I think the bottom line of this whole message here is don't give up hope on the dream. Keep believing that there's going to be a time, and maybe the time is now, where you're going to feel called to step into a deeper, truer version of yourself. And you're going to come back to the artist that you dreamed of being when you were younger, or whatever that was for you, an entertainer, performer, writer, whatever. Every day, a new person becomes a best-selling author. Every day, a new person changes their life in midlife and becomes a successful musician or an artist or whatever. I don't know if I just sound crazy now, but the truth is that you're free to do anything you want in this life. And if you're skilled, if you're college educated, even if you're not, but you're watching this and this makes sense to you, you're smart, and you can pretty much do anything you want, and you can figure out creative ways to make a living, and you don't need to stress out about money. Because when you get in tune with who you are, when you get back in touch with your sensibilities. Oops, I just turned a light on accident. When you come back home to yourself, you find a world of possibility that you didn't realize was available to you because you lost touch with it in the career that minimized you and made you just be like polishing widgets all day and trying to be like make faster widgets than the other guy next to you. You can do a lot more than make widgets. You were put here to live an extraordinary dream. And I didn't mean this to be a whole rant on that, but it's hard for me not to want to kind of talk about what I'm really excited about feeling and experiencing, because I've been kind of coming back home to this truth myself, and it's become my mission to help like more people wake up to the ways that we've been minimized by our jobs and life circumstances, but especially jobs and especially industries that were supposed to be about innovation and forward in the world. And it turns out a lot of them are actually just kind of moving us backwards. So that being said, this was day 2. My goal is to make these introductions a little bit better, a little more interesting, a little more on point every day, and kind of see who finds these videos. And if you're watching this, I hope this found you. Hope this found you feeling inspired, and I hope to have left you feeling a little bit encouraged, if not a lot encouraged. And I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna be here every day. So please follow along. It's great to meet you, and have a great day.